Hello guys, welcome to the fiction series. Today we are gonna see, what if Naruto was the natural born in Bleach? Huge shout out to Mad Raptor Fanfiction for this story. If you want more awesome fan fiction like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So without wasting any time, let's get into the video. Why was he born? Hollows had names, many of them had names they made for themselves, but some hollows kept the names they had as humans. Be they female or male hollows, all hollows did have names to them, and rare though as it may be, some hollows were born. It was even rarer than a Vastolord, a hollow being born naturally. Well, unnaturally. It was similar to how even soul reapers could give birth and have children. He only had a mother though, so his birth was even stranger by the standards of the rare hollow births. His mother had been a Vastolord with her hollow hole being located on her womb, so she was not able to birth a child normally. She also did not consume souls. Ever since becoming a Vastolord, she refused to consume the souls of others to grow her strength further. Even though the hunger was unbearable at times, she didn't eat. Even though she allowed her group top feed and would kill, she did not eat. She only ate a single time. The one time she ate, and it was not a soul. It was just raw energy that came out of a crack in space and time. An energy that was made out of half spirit energy, half physical energy, and then fused together with a third unknown energy. She hollows could only eat things made out of spirit energy. She was unable to digest the raw energy. She gained faint memories of the energy, and while she could not digest it, it stayed inside of her body and developed using her own spirit energy. So she eventually gave birth. She gave birth to the only Vastolord child ever born, and one born without a father, the act of sex, or even the need for a womb. She named him after the memories she retained from the piece of soul energy she swallowed. Uzumaki Naruto. I hate this place. He hated Hueco Mundo, but his mother didn't want him to stray too far from her. He was young for a hollow, even younger for a Vastolord, and she was afraid that if he left Hueco Mundo that he would get in trouble. His body was not fully matured since he had not grown into his adult form. He looked around the age of 16. 166 centimeters tall with uncharacteristically peach-colored skin for a hollow, and he had bright blonde hair that he either inherited from his mother or got from his soul. His lower body was completely covered in bone armor from the waist down, and he had a hole that went through the center of his stomach. His right shoulder had a bone shoulder pad with a spiral on the front, while his left shoulder had no spiral, and the bone shoulder pads were connected to armor that went over his neck and collarbone, leading to a mask that covered the lower half of his face. A mask shaped similar to a jaw. His body was thin because he had never eaten. His bright blue eyes had a slight green edge to them, and he looked at the white sands around him in anger. He hated this world. He hated Hueco Mundo. He hated being a hollow. He didn't allow himself to act like a hollow, and he didn't allow himself to consume other hollows. He hated the thought of his kind killing each other, and even more he hated the very fact that his kind existed to eat innocent human souls. He hated the white sand and the eternal night with no sun, but it was all there was. There was no warmth and only hunger, with happiness being reserved for only those strong enough to never need to worry about being eaten. He felt wrong because he was born the villain. He was forbidden by his mother from leaving Hueco Mundo, though he had the ability to go to the human realm and the soul society if he wanted to go. I'm starving, I hate this hunger, I wanted to go away. He was Uzumaki Naruto, named after the piece of soul that gave rise to his own soul. The piece of soul that his mother had used in order to birth him. A soul piece of soul that was born outside of the reincarnation cycle. His mother gleaned the name from the energy that gave life to him, and that was part of the reason why she didn't want him to go to the soul society or human realm. He was unique. His mother refused to let him eat, though he didn't want to eat. Eating meant that he would consume other souls, and he refused to do that. His mother wished for him to retain a pure soul, untarnished by the appetite of hollows. Rah! Naruto stood up and opened the jaw of his mask, revealing his mouth underneath it and the whisker marks on his cheeks. A yellow ball formed in front of his mouth before he blasted a petrified tree nearby and reduced it to ashes. He formed another yellow ball and turned his head before he blasted a boulder to pieces with a yellow beam of spirit energy. He whipped his head around and looked at a hill of sand before he formed a third ball and blasted it, scattering the sands to the winds. Thinking about his hunger got him pissed. I'll be back, that should have scared everyone away. Naruto closed his mask and looked around. He was sure he scattered his spirit energy all over the area and made it seem like he was throwing a tantrum. He extended his hand and a black rip in space opened up in front of him. He stepped through it into the black void. He liked to sneak out of Hueco Mundo. Then the Soul Society. The portal opened and closed quickly. Naruto jumped through it and his mask twisted into a smile in response to his emotions. He felt a cool breeze and sunshine whenever he entered the Soul Society, so it was worth the trouble when it came to tricking his family. He quickly ran over towards the bushes nearby and he started to pull some clothes out of the bushes. Black hakama pants and a white kimono top with an orange obi to hold it together. He covered up all of the armor on his body with the clothes, except for the armor over his feet, which looked like shoes anyway. Taking the armor off his body was a painful process, so better just allow the pants to cover his feet. He grabbed an orange scarf and started to wrap it around his neck with a smile never leaving his face. He wrapped the entire lower half of his face with the scarf and made sure his never was wrapped up as well. He took these clothes from a soul killed by a hollow. Not him. He contained his spirit pressure as much as possible because he didn't want to get discovered. Sadly, as a Vasto Lord, his spirit pressure was equal to that of a captain class Shinigami. If he didn't lower it, then he would get swarmed by enemies. Even the small amount of time that he used to get dressed would attract Shinigami to his general location. Naruto jumped into a tree and landed on a branch. He was correct because moments later 4 Shinigami appeared. "Hey, you, did you see a hollow in the area?" A man wearing a white haori over his black Shinigami uniform asked when he saw Naruto in the tree. It only took them seconds to hurry their asses into gear and gather together a captain and several Shinigami together. He was followed by a small teen girl with blonde hair and a badge on her arm. The captain a different one than usual. Naruto thought. He waved to the captain. "No, I haven't seen a hollow." The man smiled at Naruto. "No, I guess you have not seen the hollow. Hey, Hiyori, why don't you go on with the others? I want to talk with our friend here." The captain stated as he gestured for his allies to leave. He looked at Naruto with a friendly smile and he seemed to have his guard dropped. He could attack the man if he wanted to, but Naruto didn't feel like he was in any danger. "You're holding back quite a lot of spirit pressure, that is pretty impressive. Even holding it back, your spirit pressure is at least equal to a third seat." Naruto sighed in relief when the other Shinigami left while the captain was talking, since what he was talking about was no concern to them. Naruto jumped out of the tree he was hanging out in and made sure his disguise didn't slip. "I'm not sure what you mean." "I'm sure you don't, but still, you're not even a Shinigami, but you have such high spirit pressure. I guess I was wrong, I judged it wrong. It seems it's actually at the level of 6th seat." The captain corrected himself when Naruto suppressed his spirit energy even further. He groaned in pain as he pushed down his levels as far as he could safely go. He couldn't suppress his spirit energy any lower than that. He misjudged himself. He thought he could go weaker. "Uzumaki Naruto, and you are?" "I'm the captain of Squad 12, and even if your spirit pressure is only at a 6th seat, that is still quite the achievement. Seated officers are by no means weak and you don't even have a Zanpakuto, quite the achievement. Kisuke is my name." Kisuke introduced himself as he extended his hand to Naruto. Naruto took his hand. Shinigami were not his enemies. "Well, Captain Kisuke, a pleasure." "You seem tense, Naruto." Kisuke spoke casually and he smiled just as casually as he spoke. Naruto was interrupted from speaking before he could respond when his stomach gave a growl and Kisuke looked at Naruto with a raised eyebrow. "Let's grab something to eat, we're out in the boonies, so nobody will notice you want a bowl of ramen." Kisuke offered Naruto with a welcoming smile. Naruto felt himself pulled to answer. He was an idiot. "Yes, that sounds awesome. Later." "Man, you've got quite the healthy appetite." Kisuke laughed as he watched Naruto eating between the gap in his scarf, leaving only enough room to eat and not enough for his face to be revealed. Kisuke was finished eating and had an empty bowl in front of him and he watched in amusement as Naruto enjoyed his meal. "This is so good." He loved food. "Can I have another?" Naruto asked Kisuke with excitement leaking out of his voice in waves. "Sure, have as much as you want, but slow down. I want to have a conversation with you, like about your thoughts on hollows." Kisuke asked Naruto. Naruto stopped eating. "Hollows need to be exterminated for our own good, that is all there is to say." Naruto spoke the truth in his mind and that was it. He gave no information other than that and Kisuke was silent for a few entire minutes. "Sounds like you want to become a Shinigami." "I can't become one, I don't have a Zanpakuto and I can't get one." Naruto would have loved to help purify his species like a Shinigami, but he lacked the tools needed for the job. Kisuke looked at Naruto with a raised eyebrow before he leaned forward and grinned. "Anyone can get one, even hollows can get them if the Soul Society allowed it to happen. You see, nobody is born with a Zanpakuto spirit, well, nobody has yet been born with a spirit." Kisuke started to whisper as he explained something to Naruto, something that he was sure that nobody outside of the Shinigami were supposed to know. Naruto started to listen. "What?" "All it takes is getting your hands on an Asauchi and feeding it your spirit energy over time. When you enter the academy, they loan you an Asauchi and when you graduate, they give it to you." Kisuke started to explain to Naruto. "You mean? Anyone who gets their hands on an Asauchi can develop Shinigami powers and create a Zanpakuto for themselves. Eventually, as you train and bond with your Itachi, it will become a Zanpakuto and bond to your soul. Shinigami are Shinigami, because we create Zanpakuto, anyone with spirit pressure can become a Shinigami. Kisuke could see that Naruto was interested in what he was saying. Even a hollow? If a hollow ever managed to get an Itachi, then with enough time, even they would acquire Shinigami powers. Kisuke confirmed for Naruto. Are you interested in joining the Gate 13? I can write you a letter of recommendation. Maybe skip school and just go straight into joining a squad. I'm sure somebody with 6 seat levels of spirit pressure would be welcomed. Kisuke assured Naruto with a pat on the shoulder. Naruto stared into an empty ramen bowl. Can I think about it? Sure, take all the time you need. Why don't we meet up in 3 days and you can tell me your answer, or if you need more time. Kisuke stated as Naruto stood up and started to leave. He had a lot to think about. Now to return to Hueco Mundo. His mother. Dear Harrible, a vast old lord like himself, much like himself. She was where the green edge to his eyes came from, and he got his messy blonde hair from her. She was much taller than he was, and only a small amount of her skin was visible underneath her near full body white armor. What wasn't covered in armor was covered in a light blue hollow skin. She could pass for humanoid easily if it were not for her face being covered mostly by a mask that only showed the smallest portion of her face and a large sword connected to her arm. She was a vast old lord, and she had 3 Ajuchas that worked with her. While an Ajuchas was considered enough to fight a captainless Shinigami and challenge them, a vast old lord was considered above a captain in power. In their little group, they had the power that could be compared to 4 captains from the Soul Society if he counted himself in their power structure. Nobody really messed with them or tried to attack them because of the simple fact that there were 2 vast old lord amongst their group. Mother, can we talk in private? Does something concern you? Tyr asked without looking at him directly. His voice got the attention of the others in the group. Tyr refused to sacrifice others, so to recover and control her hunger, oftentimes she would sit and just relax. A deer, lion, and large snake hollow group lifted their heads and looked towards him. He was more human looking than even his mother. With only armor covering the top of his chest, shoulders, lower face, and legs, he could more easily pass for a human soul among them all. He was the smallest of their group exactly because he was the most human looking, but his power was not inferior to his own mother's might. Their similar status as Vasto Lord and the fact neither of them ate souls to increase their powers put them on equal footing. Yes. Naruto answered her. Is this about your trips to the Soul Society? Tyr asked Naruto as she looked at him with a sideways glance. Yes, I know about those trips. I'm your mother, I never take my eyes off you. Tyr answered the unasked question. No matter where he went, she never allowed him to escape her senses. If he ever felt like he was in trouble, she would go rushing towards him without hesitation. The first time he left for the Soul Society, she was angry, but she said nothing to him because he came back safely. Then the next few times he came back safely, she decided that he could keep his secret until the day that he brought it up to her himself. Judging by his tone, he was about to bring it up. The conversation this tense prevented Apache, Mila Rose, and Sun Sun from speaking as they listened to what was being talked about. I was offered a chance to become a Shinigami. Naruto came out and said it. There was no way he could become a Shinigami or go to the Soul Society without his mother discovering his disappearance anyway. As much as he hated hollows, his mother was one of the few exceptions to the rule. She didn't eat hollows anymore, ever since she became a Vasto Lord, she had not eaten a single soul. She was different. The tension in the room rose. Shinigami are the enemies of hollows. Tyr told Naruto plainly. She believed him that he was offered the position. She believed he would never lie to her about being offered such a thing, it was too outlandish of a lie to make. If he accepted the position and trained to become a Shinigami, then that would make him an enemy to hollows. I've never considered hollows to be my allies. As far as I see it, the Shinigami are my allies. What about us? Apache couldn't hold herself as she stood up on all fours and approached Naruto, and there was clear hurt in her voice. Naruto couldn't look at her directly, since she was a hollow that still ate other hollows, in order to not regress back to their mindless previous forms. She was hurt by his words, but there was a lack of anger in them. The others seemed curious about his answer. It was known that he hated his own species, they always knew, but they never knew that he considered hollows to be his enemies. Then again, they could understand it. Hollows for the most part looked at each other as future food or a current meal. It was rare for hollows to be allies with each other or bond. Hollows typically didn't like or trust hollows either. Family, your family, but I want to become a Shinigami. I want to put hollows to rest with a Zanpakuto. I want to purify them. Naruto glanced at Apache before he returned his attention back to Tyr. She stood up and looked down at him, meeting his eyes with her own stern gaze. I want to kill hollows in a way that helps them. Will you kill us? Tyr asked him. Know your family, but I'm sure if I become a Shinigami and prove myself, then I can convince them to accept you all as Shinigami. Naruto promised. Tear could possibly become a Shinigami Hollow in the future, but the others would have to become a Vasto Lord before they could be accepted. If they had that potential. They silently communicated with each other while Naruto and Tear stared each other down. Tear's body started to glow golden as she started to exert her spirit pressure, and Naruto's own golden yellow spirit pressure fought her pressure off. The two of them contested each other with a battle of spirit pressure. They will never accept you, we are enemies, but you may go. Tear stopped fighting and walked before she sat down. She closed her eyes and took a breath before she turned her head sharply towards Naruto. When they turn on you, come back. I want you to come back at every chance you get. Your safety comes first and foremost. Tear gave him conditions, and they were easy to fill conditions. What, Lady Tear, you can't be serious. No Shinigami could accept a hollow. He's your own child, you can't let him do this. Tear heard their protests, and she lowered her hand, and she touched her hands to where her hollow hole was. She looked at where Naruto's hole was placed on him, because the two places were so close together. I'm going to rip my mask off once you leave. Tear stated to Naruto, and he looked at her with his eyes narrowing. Why? As a Vasto Lord, there is a good chance I can become an Ranker by ripping my mask off. If I ever think you are in danger, I'm taking you back from the Soul Society by force. If you are hurt, then I will kill whoever hurt you. Tear gave him that warning. It was a deadly warning for anyone who Naruto came across. It was her way of telling him that she still viewed the Soul Society as her enemy and that she just barely approved of him going to try and join them. It was her duty to make sure she had the strength to protect, but their strength was too similar to each other at the moment. If she wanted the strength to protect him, then she needed to get stronger than whatever enemy might hurt him. The only way to do that was to gain the power that came with ripping her mask off. Me too, if you're going to join the enemy, then when you fail and they turn on you, I'm going to rip heads off. Mila Rose stood up. She would be happy to try and rip her mask off to gain the power that she would need. Sun nodded. She planned to join. I'm going with you. Apache stated as she lowered her head towards the ground, and with an awkward display, she stomped her hooves on her horns. Tear didn't stop Apache from doing what she was doing. If anything, she placed her hand on Apache's back and helped her get herself steady enough to rip her own mask off. She ripped her mask off her face. Apache let out a blood-curdling scream that got everyone to back away from her as her body glowed bright red and started to shrink down. Red mass jumped off of her body, cane became two weapons on the ground next to her. When her body finished taking a human form, she was a lot smaller than before. She was about 156 centimeters tall, and her body was covered by nothing. She was average in height, but she had a more petite frame to her, and what remained of her mask had transformed into headgear. Her hollow hole moved so that it was in the middle of her stomach, just above her belly button. She had medium size pressed on her petite, lithe frame. Apache, you cheater. You thief. Apache stared Naruto in the eyes, her left eye yellow with her. She stood up and walked towards Naruto on shaky legs, not used to having 2 legs instead of 4. She touched his chest. Nobody touches you, got it? What? Nobody touches you, I am your bodyguard. You are Lady Tear's child, and she is my master. I am loyal to her, and I am loyal to you. I don't trust those funkers in the Soul Society, so I'm coming with you because honestly I know they won't accept you. Apache didn't believe in him at all. She wasn't going to patiently sit back like Tear and allow him to put himself in danger. She was going to stay by his side as his bodyguard. Tear didn't say a word. Her spirit pressure still feels similar to that of a hollow with where her hollow hole is located. She could cover it up and pass for a Shinigami if she suppressed her spirit energy. Tear felt that Apache's idea had merit to it, so she didn't disagree with it. Not to mention the fact that as an Apache, Apache had just taken a major risk. She didn't hesitate to rip her own mask off, which had a higher chance of killing her since she was not a Vasto Lord. She could not disrespect what Apache sacrificed to gain the power she needed to accomplish her goal. How much can you suppress your spirit energy? Naruto asked Apache. She pushed it down as much as possible, to the point that her spirit energy was less than a seated officer. Naruto frowned under his mask when he realized that she was so much better at suppressing her power than he was. With how suppressed it was at the moment, nobody would ever pay attention to her. He was jealous of her. Whatever, see you later. Naruto looked at his mother before he opened up the void and walked through it. In the Soul Society. I hate these clothes. Wear them. Naruto finished getting dressed in his usual disguise and he had some clothes that he gave to Apache. His spare disguise, but she refused to wear half of it. She wore hakama pants and she wore a mini kimono top that was tightly tied around her hollow hole. She left her stomach exposed, with just her hollow hole being covered by bandages under the kimono, and she left her cleavage exposed. Are you going to cover your mask? Naruto looked at her headgear. No. I'll just say it is a hair accessory, come on, let's go. Naruto started to walk towards the point he would be meeting Kisuke so that he could give his answer to the man. He glanced at Apache, who walked with an unladylike swagger to her steps, and he just sighed at the way she gladly drew attention to herself. She had her zanpakuto hanging from her wrists. They didn't have long to wait. Ah, Naruto, nice to see you and your cute friend. Don't look at me like that, bastard. Apache shouted at the Shinigami, who just stepped away from her with his hands raised in surrender. She smirked at his body language and she looked at Naruto, who stared her down. Kisuke didn't seem bothered by her. He glanced at the remains of her hollow mask and he looked at the bandages peeking out from under her kimono top. He gained a glint in his eye as he looked at Naruto before he smiled pleasantly. So? I want to become a Shinigami, you can ignore her. I'm his bodyguard, so you better not ignore me. You make a move on him and I will rip your asshole out with my hands. Apache rudely pushed her face up towards Kisuke, who just laughed off her aggression. Wonderful, and as it has it, I was able to get 2 other captains to agree to writing you letters of recommendation. My friend from Squad 2 and the captain of Squad 13 both agreed. I explained that your spirit pressure was already at a 6th seat. You'll be given an Asauchi when you join your squad. Your captain will give you the rest of the details. Kisuke stated as he started to walk towards where the Shinigami lived in the Soul Society. No academy. Me and my friend thought it would be better if you didn't go to the academy. Kisuke informed Naruto with a hinting smile. You can learn Kido from your squad and they will teach you everything you need to know. Kisuke stated. Naruto nodded. So, what is his starting rank going to be? Lieutenant obviously, since he's so powerful. Apache stated. Kisuke grinned. He won't have a rank until his Asauchi becomes his Zanpakuto, after that, he will be given a rank by his captain, so he's unranked. Naruto sighed in relief. That worked in his favor. It felt weird. He was dressed in the robes of a Shinigami and he even removed the armor that covered his legs to properly wear the clothes. Not having his lower body covered in armor felt strange, if only he could remove the armor that covered his neck, collarbone and shoulders, but that armor was an extended part of his mask, so it would not come off. Most of his body was unarmored because of this fact though, and wearing Shinigami robes just gave him a weird feeling. It was weird, felt weird, and Apache gave him a weird look. Not bad, you should keep your mask showing. Apache stated as he relaxed back. He had been given a room in the Squad 13 barracks, since Kisuke seemed to have convinced his captain that he needed the space to relax, and that his spirit energy was a hazard to people if exposed for too long. It was the only place that he was able to remove his scarf and show his face off, though half of his face was covered by a mask. Apache refused to wear the entire Shinigami uniform, since she was not a Shinigami. Instead, she just wore a loose white kimono and white bandages around her stomach to cover up her hollow hole now, with the kimono length going down to the middle of her thighs. She excised a large portion of her body because of how loose she wore it. I need to go meet the captain and get my Asauchi. Naruto finished wrapping his scarf around his face and neck before he left the room. Squad 13. The squad that Kisuke had managed to get him in, because apparently he had managed to get the captain of this squad to agree to take him in. Naruto walked in the hallways and he saw Shinigami casually talking to each other. The air between Thia's squad mates was very warm and friendly and it filled Naruto with a sense of belonging when they pleasantly waved to him as he passed them by. They didn't even give him weird looks. Man, the newbie seems strong. You're damn right he's strong, Lord Naruto is the strongest male and you will remember that. Apache stated as she walked with her usual wide-stepping fashion, confident in herself and her words. She heard the words of the Shinigami and she had to open her mouth. Naruto just covered his eyes and hid himself when the Shinigami laughed in response to her words. Welcome to the squad, Lord Naruto. Should we bow as you walk by, Lord Naruto? I like these guys, they get it. Apache stated as she gestured as they passed by 2 more Shinigami who took her earlier words and ran with them. Both of the Shinigami bowed as Naruto passed by and Apache took to it well. She grinned wide as she watched everyone teasing Naruto without realizing that they were just teasing him. They welcomed him with open arms and open arms meant teasing. Captain Yuki, take is this way, newbie, follow me. Who are you? Naruto asked when a tall man with dark purple hair stepped forward and grinned at him. Shiba Kane, you can call me Kane, I guess you could call me the guy in charge when the captain is out sick, though I'm not the lieutenant. Kane introduced himself to Naruto as he extended his hand to the male. When Naruto reached out to shake his hand, the man just reached up and rubbed the top of his head. Man, you suck at controlling your spirit pressure. Kane commented as he turned around and started to walk. Apache jumped at the man. Naruto grabbed her by the kimono sash and pulled her back. I don't know what you're talking about, this is all the spirit energy I have. If that is the case, then I'm impressed. Your spirit energy is as strong as a higher-ranked seated officer then, and you don't even have a Zanpakuto yet. Who knows, if we're lucky, maybe Captain Yukitake will make you the lieutenant instead of me. Kane laughed. If you have reasons for hiding your strength, that's fine, but don't let it put your life in danger. Kane spoke sagely for a moment. There was silence as they walked. Then they entered a room. It was Captain Yukitake that was in the room, and he was holding a sheathed sword. He was smiling as he looked at Naruto enter. I see Kisuke wasn't lying. This is very interesting. Please, come in and let's have a pleasant conversation. So, tell me a bit about yourself and why you wanted to become a Shinigami. Yukitake sat down, and he placed the nameless sword across his lap. He leaned forward and gestured for Naruto to sit down across from him. It was with some hesitation, before he sighed and sat on his knees across from the captain. He allowed himself to relax. I'm Uzumaki Naruto, and I like ramen, and I want to save as many hollows from their hunger. I think they were horrible, disgusting creatures that destroy lives, but I understand that they are driven by hunger, that their hunger is horrible. I hate them so much that I want to end their suffering. So I want to become a Shinigami. Naruto spoke about himself and his goal for becoming a Shinigami. Pain whistled. That might be the best reason I've ever heard. Most people just want to kill hollows because they are our enemies, but you seem to consider them lost allies. Kane spoke as he gestured to Naruto with a grin. Naruto frowned. Hollows are not my allies, but if you saw somebody suffering, wouldn't you want to save them? Naruto didn't agree with that. I'm Jishira Yukitake and I agree. It is only natural to want to save the suffering, and I find your hatred for hollows interesting. I think you can be trusted with this. Yukitake spoke gently as he took the sword from his lap and he placed it in Naruto's lap. Naruto looked down at the sword before he reached down and picked it up gently. Meditate with it each day, and every day you do, place your spirit energy into the blade. Over time, it will become your Zanpakuto, your partner. Naruto gripped the sword and sheath with both hands as he looked at it, while Apache looked at the sword with an apprehensive look. So, what rank is this guy getting with his strength? He can't be unseated. Kane stated as he stepped forward. Naruto looked at Kane. But don't you start at the bottom? Not really, ranks are decided based on strength and merit. It is common for people who just graduate from the academy to get a seated officer spot, and even with you trying to suppress your power, you are stronger than most seated officers. Kane explained, while Yukitake just smiled. He looked towards Naruto with a glint in his eye. Yes, and Kisuke seems to have a high opinion of him. Kane, do you still want to reject my offer to become my lieutenant? Yukitake looked towards Kane, who frowned. Not really. Okay then Naruto, why don't you and Kane had a little sparring match? Since you never went to the academy, it would be nice to see your current skill level. Sparring will also help your Itachi become his Zanpakuto faster. Let's say winner gets a prize. Yukitake stood up and started to walk towards a further away spot where he could sit and watch the spar. Heh, good luck, Purple Lord. Naruto is going to kick your ass. Apache went over and scoffed at Kane. Naruto frowned. Sounds great, let's see what you got, but if you hold back, you might get hurt. So do yourself a favor and don't hold back. Kane moved across the room and unsheathed his sword, grabbing the handle with both hands. His Zanpakuto leaked out spirit energy, a subtle amount that would normally go unnoticed. Naruto stood up and looked at his sword before he unsheathed it with one hand and kept his sword at a lowered position. I should hold back just enough to look good. Naruto was ready for the spar to begin whenever Kane was ready. He raised his arm up and blocked a downward slash from Kane, who had moved quickly to cross the distance between them. When his slash was blocked, he switched his grip and changed his hand positions before he performed an upward slash. He continued the momentum from his earlier slash and transferred it into a more powerful attack. Naruto blocked the second slash by bringing his nameless sword closer to his body. Kane stepped back as his eyes widened. He has no technique at all, but his strength and reaction times are not to be laughed at. He didn't even seem surprised by either of my attacks. Kane thought as he watched a sword swing across his vision. He stepped forward and performed a stabbing motion with his sword, but Naruto knocked the stab to the side. Kane pulled his sword back and raised his guard, using it to block a wide slash. He was pushed back. He firmed up his stance as his feet started to slide across the wooden floor and he started to push back against Naruto. He stopped Naruto from pushing him back further, but he couldn't gain any ground on Naruto. Kisuke wasn't wrong, his combat abilities are already on par with a captain. Yukitake thought as he watched Naruto holding back against Kane. He had been told by Kisuke that this youth was as strong as a captain was supposed to be, and as hard as it was to believe, he was forced to admit that it was the truth. Naruto was clearly holding his spirit pressure back as much as possible, keeping it down to the level of a seated officer, seemed to be as much as he could lower it. That was still very telling. Pain was using his Zanpakuto in its sealed state for the spar, but the difference between their power was clear as day. If the man were to force Naruto to actually stop holding back, he would have needed to release his Shikai. That implied that for Naruto to use his full strength, he would need to be fighting a captain using their Shikai. Uchiha looked at the girl next to him and he judged her combat abilities to be nearly on par with a captain with their Zanpakuto sealed. "What will it take for me to make you take this seriously?" Kain asked as he pushed forward and swung at Naruto. Naruto frowned. "I'm taking this seriously, it's hard to keep up with you." BFFFT. Apache held back her laughter when Naruto spoke and he frowned at her laughter. He blocked Kain's next slash and he made it look like he was struggling against the power behind the strike. Kain saw that. He realized that he wasn't holding back enough and is trying to make himself seem even weaker. He has no sword technique, but I can't get even a scratch in. This is almost insulting. Kain thought as he had the brief thought of using his Shikai, but that would be too much for an indoor spar. He glanced at his captain and knew that the man had realized the same thing as him. Uchiha nodded. "Pick his ass, Lord Naruto, stop holding back and show him who's boss." "I'm not holding back, I'm giving it my all." Naruto groaned in annoyance. He nudged his feet backwards as he made it seem like Kain was pushing him back. Kain gave 3 fast slashes and he barely blocked them and allowed the third slash to get him across his arm. His clothes were cut. Naruto pulled his arm back quickly when Kain's sword slashed his arm but was unable to cut his skin. "It's not just his strength, my spirit pressure without my Shikai isn't strong enough to scratch him. We could literally do this all day and I would be no closer to winning." Kain grinned as he felt his sword touch Naruto. He had noticed that when he scored that hit that Naruto had allowed that blow to get into his guard. Naruto was purposely making himself seem like he was slightly weaker than him so that he could pass for just strong enough. "I think that is enough, and Kain, you scored the first hit. So you win the prize and the prize is you can decide what Naruto's rank should be. I trust your judgment completely." Uchiha spoke with a smile. Naruto sighed in relief. "I lost, so Kain won't suggest anything that would draw attention to me. Lieutenant, I think with his potential and his current strength, there is no better position for him. We don't have a lieutenant, don't worry Naruto, I'll help you get used to the position." Kain grabbed Naruto's shoulder and pushed him forward. Uchiha could only smile pleasantly. "Yes, I agree. I would have liked Kain to have become lieutenant, but with his guidance, you would make a great one as well." "Well then, Lieutenant, I'll ask Kain if he won't help with the paperwork and teach you what you need to know." Uchiha clapped his hands and made it final. Naruto frowned under his scarf, but he nodded his head. "But I lost." "Yeah, you lost, alright, if you call that losing then I would hate to be on the other end of you winning." "Well, see you later Lieutenant Naruto." Kain walked out while sheathing his sword, a pleasant grin, showing that he was happy with the results of the spar. "I just joined though." "Yes, and it is a wonderful achievement." Uchiha spoke with a warm smile. Naruto just nodded awkwardly. This was not according to plan. It felt like it happened overnight. It was over 70 years ago now, but Naruto still could not help himself but think about the night that he learned that nearly half of the captains of the 13 squads were banished from the Soul Society and many lieutenants as well. Even the lieutenant of the Kido Corps had been banished from the Soul Society after being slated for execution. Kisuke was among those who went into exile with the captain of the Kido Corps. Izasauchi was a Zanpakuto. The sword guard had changed shape to become a circle with a spiral motif in the center of it and the hilt changed to a dark red and orange color. He had his Zanpakuto now, though it took years for it to develop. The time it took had been on the longer side, it would seem it was harder for it to develop thanks to what he was. Either way, now he had his Zanpakuto, further proving that he was a Shinigami to those around him. "Uchiha is sick, but I can take a message." Naruto sighed. It was Kain. "Yo Lord Naruto. Funk. Eat my ass. I'm married, so can't do that." Kain walked into Naruto's room and he was dragging a woman with him, not his wife, but a girl with a uniform. Naruto looked at the girl and he sensed that she had the spirit pressure of a seated officer, yet he didn't recognize her as an officer. "This is the new recruit, Rukia, she's from a noble family." Kain teased as he pushed Rukia towards Naruto. She gulped. She was also blushing from the ass-eating comment. She looked around Naruto's room. "I'm sorry to disturb you, but I was told that if Captain Uchiha was sick that I was supposed to come to you Lieutenant Uzumaki." Rukia bowed deeply and Naruto got out of his meditative position. He picked up his Zanpakuto and he looked at Apache as she napped in the corner of his room. "Do you know your sword's name?" Naruto questioned her. She shook her head. "Lieutenant. Lord Naruto, we all call him Lord Naruto around here." Kain rubbed the top of Rukia's head fiercely and ruffled her hair as if she were a child. He grabbed her shoulder as he did so. Rukia looked between Kain and Naruto, the two men in the room, and she glanced towards the non-Shinigami in the corner. You see, when the captain is sick, you might as well call this guy our captain, but I do a lot of the paperwork, so I guess I'm also kind of like the captain. Kain let go of her and pushed her towards Naruto. He waved as he left. Naruto just sighed. Just call me Naruto, so Rukia, take a seat, I've got some tea brewing. I guess I'll decide if you will become a seated officer or not. Naruto stated as he walked over to the teapot that he had going. Oh, there is no need. I don't want to impose. I was also told that I did not get a seat. The captain is out sick, so I'm the one who decides if the new recruits get a seat or not. So I'm going to ask you a few questions. Relax a little, you're so tense. Naruto could see the tension in her shoulders. Even as she made a show of relaxing, he couldn't help but sigh at how she remained tense. That was Kain, he's the squad's third seat, and the fifth seat belongs to both Kiin and Sentaro. I can't give you the fourth seat either. The seated position, I'm not that strong, sir. Rukia waved her hands back and forth to deny such a high seat. Naruto poured her a cup of tea. She shut up and tried it. This is horrible, the taste is nasty. Rukia thought as she forced herself to drink the tea. So, how is it? It's delicious, sir. Rukia stated with her smile as forced as she could make it. She set the cup down, while Naruto smiled, not that she could see his smile. She could see that his eyes were smiling. Sir, are you not going to drink? Rukia couldn't tell him that it tasted horrible, but she could get him to drink it. Later, so tell me about yourself, let's be friends. Naruto extended his hand to Rukia. Friends? We're a big family here. Yuki take wants the squad to be one big, warm family, and I completely agree. Hard work is rewarded, and if you fail, then we will help you stand up. We're not like the other squads. Naruto reached into his pocket and he pulled out a piece of paper. He showed that it had the Kichiki seal on it and he tossed it to the ground and he grabbed his teapot and poured the tea on it. And honestly, you're on the weak side, but you have some serious potential. Naruto didn't even let Rukia read the letter before he ruined it. Sir, what was in that letter? Just your family telling us not to give you a seated officer position because they don't think you are strong enough. Naruto could see that Rukia had the eyes of a woman who felt betrayed when he told her that. She didn't seem angry, if anything she was visibly depressed by the news that her family didn't think she would succeed. So, tell me about yourself, anything you want to tell me. I'm not important enough to talk about, sir. Rukia denied him. He grunted as he sat down with a loud thud. What do you like, dislike, any hobbies? I've got it. Why do you want to be a Shinigami? Naruto asked her as he tried to get to know the girl. She was very closed off in how she answered questions. She tried to think about the answers and she didn't have one right away. I'm not sure how to answer. Then how about this, what is more important to you, strength or beauty? Naruto asked her a different question. Strength. Oh ho. There we go, there is an answer. Hours later. And then can you believe it? Rukia had a flushed face as she sat across from Naruto, her robes loose as she allowed herself to cool down. She had been drinking the tea he made for her for several hours. His tea was not just tea. It was hard alcohol, a way for him to talk to new recruits in a way that he could get them to relax and show their true nature to him. Without her pride getting in her way, Rukia was much more like a tomboy and a cute girl than she was a noble woman. She was also a small woman, so the amount she had been drinking had gotten her drunk off her ass. I totally can. Naruto stated, agreeing with her, even though she didn't finish her story. She was making no sense at all as she spoke, but he rolled with it. Since you're wasted, you should meditate before you sleep tonight and try to talk to your sword. Naruto told her with a wide smile. She blinked a few times. Why, sir? You're drunk, what better time to have a heart-to-heart with your sword? Naruto questioned her. The simple fact was that people could not hear their zanpakuto when their hearts were closed off, but when you were drunk off her ass, your heart was as open and honest as could be. As it stood, every single person in the squad under him had their zanpakuto's true name already thanks to this trick he had been working on. Everyone who struggled with unlocking their Shikai managed to do it thanks to this method. They were the only squad where they had over 300 members with Shikai. Typically, in a squad, it was only seated officers who had unlocked their Shikai, with rare exceptions among the unranked. They were the only squad where that was not the case, thanks to this unique little trick that seemed to have an abnormally high success rate. The next morning. Rukia groaned. She felt horrible. She looked at the sword in her hand and she couldn't help but feel accomplished when she realized that she knew the name of her sword now. She obeyed the instructions of her lieutenant and meditated while she was drunk and she came face to face with her Zanpakuto spirit. She blushed in embarrassment when she realized that she had a weird drunken conversation with her sword thanks to that. She managed to learn the sword's name, but at the same time, she couldn't help but also remember the conversation she had with Naruto. She said so many humiliating things. Rukia yelped when a cold jar of water was placed next to her head and she looked to the side and saw Kain was offering it to her. Her eyes widened and she collapsed to her side and curled up into a ball when her head pounded. Hangover. It's become somewhat of a badge of honor at this point. Kane had made it a point to visit the rooms of all the new recruits the day after they met with Naruto. Naruto's years of trying to find ways for him to learn his own sword's name had allowed him to discover ways for others to unlock their Shikai quickly. Your first hangover with the squad doesn't feel great, but hey, you've unlocked your Shikai. Naruto isn't very smart, but when it comes to thinking outside the box, he's the best there is. Kane set the water down next to her. It had medicine in it. But Naruto. Sorry Naruto, but I think it might be better to give her some time before you make her a seated officer. She was given special treatment. Okay Captain. Naruto stated as he looked down at his bedridden captain. He had wanted to make Rukia the 20th seat of the ranked officers, but if his captain was against it, he would agree for now. He turned to talk away before Yukite grabbed the bottom of his robes and got his attention. There is a captain's meeting later, can you attend it for me? Want me to pass any messages while I'm there? Naruto asked the man, who shook his head. Naruto, as the lieutenant, always went to the meetings of the captains when his captain was sick. No matter how many times, Yukite always asked him if he would attend and didn't order him to attend. Wait, I can't. This is Rukia's first day, so I wanted to spar with her Shikai. Naruto frowned. That's okay. You sure? Yeah, it's just a captain's meeting, new squad members are more important to you. Tell me how well she does and do go easy on her. Yukite told Naruto with a gentle smile. Naruto scoffed. I'm just a lieutenant, I don't need to go that easy on her. Are we still pretending that you're not as strong as a captain? Yukite asked Naruto with some humor to his voice. No matter how many years passed, Naruto was still trying his best to hold back his strength. It was a horrible secret. Every single person in the squad knew the secret that Naruto was just as powerful as any captain among the squads. Naruto never showed his strength and he was never put in a position where he needed to show that strength. There were several captains who knew this secret as well, because try as he might, Naruto was just not good at hiding how strong he was. Almost everyone could tell that his spirit pressure was being reduced as much as possible. Naruto was stronger now. His strength had grown to the point where even if he suppressed his spirit energy, it was still at the level of a lieutenant and he had grown even better at suppressing it than when he started. I'm not pretending, I'm just not as strong as you give me credit for. Okay, we're still pretending then Lord Naruto. Not you too. Naruto groaned when his own captain used that horrible nickname to refer to him. Every single damn member of the squad used that nickname for him. Thanks to Apache using that name, everyone had started to call him that. It was a nickname that he hated, so everyone teased him with it. Damn that Apache. She gulped. Man, I would hate to be her. Kane stated as he whistled. Rukia was going to be facing Naruto's Shikai to get her used to fighting an opponent stronger than herself, against an ability that most would never want to face. She already had her Shikai activated, a beautiful white blade with a ribbon on the handle. Her sword was ice-based, and that was a great element to have. You ready Rukia? As ready as I'll ever be. Okay then get ready for this then. My Shikai is weird, so just fight like you always would. Naruto stated as he unsheathed his sword. Kane closed his eyes, knowing what was about to happen. Bind us together. Ninshu. Naruto stated as he ran his hand down the side of his sword. It glowed golden. That was it. His spirit pressure grew in response to the release of his Shikai, but that was it. Rukia looked at the release of his sword and saw the lightest of flaming golden auras around the sword. Kane kept his eyes closed since he knew what would happen if he opened his eyes. Rukia on the other hand rose her sword up and took a combat stance. She gulped when she saw that Kane was afraid to look at the fight and she looked at Naruto's sword. My Shikai is weird and not all that helpful for me. Come on then. Naruto gestured for Rukia to attack him. The spar had already started. Rukia felt herself frozen in place before she gave a roar and rushed towards Naruto. She stepped in front of him and she slashed at him. He raised his arm up and he blocked her sword with his forearm. Splish. Rukia felt a blade cut deep into her arm and she jumped back with her arm going limp at her side. She looked at her robes and saw a slash in them, right at the same spot where Naruto's clothes had been torn. Did he reflect my attack? Rukia tried to beep eyes. Nope. Are you a mind reader? Rukia asked as she swung her sword up, but she jumped back when Naruto's sword appeared in her vision. To the best of her ability, she used a flash step to escape his swipe at her shoulder. She appeared at the other end of the battle and she saw that her robes had been cut. Right on her shoulder, the same shoulder of her injured arm, had a very shallow cut across it. She looked at Naruto and she saw that his shoulder was bleeding. She saw he had some kind of armor underneath his robes. I can guess what you're thinking, my Shikai has the ability to end battles peacefully. End battles peacefully? It's simple, anyone who sees the glow of my Shikai or makes contact with the blade is bonded to me. Any wounds they inflict on me get inflicted on every person affected by my Shikai, and any wounds I inflict on anyone affected by it are also inflicted on everyone under its power. Naruto explained his Shikai to her. His shoulder healed already. I didn't cut his arm though. Rukia thought as she looked at his uninjured arm. The reason you got cut and not me was your sword wasn't sharp enough to cut me, but it is sharp enough to cut you. At the same time, my sword is sharp enough to cut me, so the damage it inflicted on you can also be inflicted to me. Now how will you fight me? Naruto asked Rukia as he lowered his sword to give her the chance to tell him her plan. He did this with every member of the squad so that could get experience fighting an enemy like him. Rukia stepped forward. Naruto used his sword to cut the back of his leg and Rukia collapsed when the same wound appeared on her own leg. She collapsed forward, unable to run with only one leg and surprised at the sudden wound. Ah! A random squad member who happened to be walking by glanced at Naruto's sword as he sparred with Rukia and all of the wounds that had been inflicted on Rukia and himself were instantly transferred to the man as well. He cursed loudly as he collapsed and Naruto hissed in annoyance, feeling sorry for what just happened. His Shikai affected everyone without discrimination. In theory, while Shikai was activated, nobody who was under its effects would be able to fight each other. Naruto looked at the back of his leg and his hollow healing had already kicked in and healed his leg. Healing itself didn't get transferred over, so others would not be healed by his regeneration abilities. Sorry. No, my bad, I looked at you guys. I'm going to visit Squad 4. You do that. Kain shouted to the officer with his eyes still closed. He was watching the fight by the sounds, since he didn't want to be under the effect of Naruto's Zanpakuto. Such a sadistic Zanpakuto, it forged a bond between you and your enemies, forcing you to try and understand each other without violence, and if you kill your enemy, you'll die too. Pain could only wince as he thought of how horrible that ability would be to go against. Not an enemy you wanted to make. The sad part was that Naruto also couldn't hurt his enemies without hurting himself because his Zanpakuto was sadistic enough to also affect him. It forged a bond of pain between himself and his enemy, which was not a bond you wanted to forge if you wanted to win. At the same time, any person who was weaker than Naruto had no chance of beating his Shikai. If you could damage yourself but not Naruto, then you had no choice but to surrender to him. If you didn't surrender, then you would just be hurting yourself by attacking Naruto. How do I respond to this power? Rukia got up and stood on an injured leg while she held her sword with her uninjured arm. She searched her brain for any answer that she could come up with and she noticed that Naruto's wounds had already healed. It must also heal him. Rukia noticed that he seemed to heal at an unreal rate. You don't. I don't. If you inflict a physical wound on me, then you inflict it on yourself, and if you use your Zanpakuto abilities against me, then they will also affect you. If you cast an illusion on me to try and escape, then you will cast the same illusion on yourself. Anything you do against me will happen to you. Anything I do against you will happen to me. Naruto told her, and she frowned as she tried to think of some way around it. Surely your Zanpakuto has a weakness. Yeah, the weakness is that it also hurts me, that is the weakness. So if I cut off your head, then I cut my own head off, and the other weakness is that it affects my allies. So if my allies are caught in its ability, if one of them dies, then every single person affected by the ability dies. My sword ends conflict. How do you beat me? Naruto asked Rukia as he lowered his sword again and he took a few steps towards her. If you're not strong enough to hurt me, you can only hurt yourself. If you are strong enough to hurt me, you will hurt both of us. If I were facing an enemy like that, I would lead them away from my allies and then I would trick my opponent into killing me, taking us both out together. Rukia stated as she thought of the best solution that she could to deal with an enemy like that. Naruto bonked her head. Idiot. Ow, I glanced, thought the fight was over. Kain laughed as he looked at his injured arm and leg and he felt a bonk on his head. He had glanced and caught a glimpse of Naruto's sword. Naruto looked at Kain before he swung his sword and started to sheath it, and while he sheathed it, he sealed it back up. Naruto rubbed the top of his head where he felt his own bonk while Rukia held her head in pain. Simple. The answer is run with your life, get stronger, and make a new plan. Retreating to fight another day is not losing. If you and your allies walk away with your lives, then you win. Naruto told Rukia. She nodded her head. Thank you, Lord Naruto. Funk. Ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha. Stop laughing, Shiba. Dirty hollows. It was a nest of hollows that were attracted by a concentrated hollow bait, far away from the Soul Society and the Rukongai itself. Rukia had a hang of her Shikai now, enough that she had been asked by Kain to learn from Naruto as he went out for a monthly extermination. She couldn't help but feel afraid. Naruto looked hungry. His eyes showed a hunger for battle and a bloodlust that she had never before seen from him. The second she activated the hollow bait, the look in his eyes changed. Apparently, during the full moon, Naruto would always spend the entire night destroying any hollows who were attracted by the bait, either by himself or with Kain. Watch him closely and I can tell you learn Squad 13's secret. Pain's words to her. The next morning. 200 hollows. By the end of the night, more than 200 hollows fell in combat and Rukia felt that she had learned more than she would from school. They came in waves and they were killed even faster than they came to the fight. By the time a hollow was finished being purified, another hollow would arrive. She herself killed 6 hollows of the countless that had fallen in battle. Naruto killed so many of them that she just rarely even got the chance to swing her sword. She frowned. She had watched his footwork, his sword work, and she tried to see whatever this secret was supposed to be. The more he fought, the angrier he seemed to get. His hatred of hollows runs deep. Rukia thought to herself as she walked behind Naruto. Since she had been with him, he had been unable to use his Shikai like she could. His Shikai was one that could not be used around allies in a life-or-death battle like that, so by being at the fight, Rukia had been a liability on him, forcing him to not fight to the best of his ability. His Zanpakuto is lonely fighting by himself to defend his allies, taking on everything by himself. His Zanpakuto forces him to shoulder the world by himself. That is the secret. Later. His Zanpakuto, it represents him. I heard you, but that isn't what you were supposed to take away from that. Kain palmed his forehead as he looked at Rukia with a shocked expression. Rukia was the first member of their squad to ever go out on a full moon with Naruto and not figure out their squad secret. She had been so focused on learning combat abilities that she didn't pay attention to the fact that Naruto had been put into an aggressive state thanks to the hollow bait, or how the longer he fought, the more like a hollow he fought. Honestly, I think he would have been able to kill even more if he were by himself. I see. This is how Naruto got so strong. He used this method to get as strong as our captain. Rukia realized the secret was the training method. She palmed her fist with a look of recognition. Squad 13 was weird. They were the warmest, most welcoming squad there was. Every single member of the over 300 squad members had unlocked their Shikai thanks to the trick that their lieutenant developed to open their hearts, and if they all joined Naruto and trained with him, they could grow to the strength of seated officers in no time at all. The way they got stronger was supposed to be a secret from the other squads. What? No, he's been as strong as a captain since he joined the squad, before he even got his Zanpakuto. Oh. You didn't notice anything off about him at all? Kain asked Rukia as he leaned forward, hinting for her to try and remember what Naruto had been like the entire night that she had fought by his side. He wanted her to figure out his secret by herself while he nudged her in the correct direction. She blinked and she frowned. She put her head to it. No. He was the same as ever, reliable, strong, and he made sure to watch my back when I got in trouble. Rukia had noticed he seemed more bloodthirsty, but that wasn't that weird when you were fighting against hollows. Naruto did not hide how much he hated their enemy, so that was just a normal reaction. Her lieutenant had always been reliable and helpful, so even if he were bloodthirsty, it wasn't like he stopped being the same man that she had come to know. Oh, this is hilarious, you haven't figured it out. Kain laughed a little when he realized that Rukia had no clue what he was talking about. She was the first member of their squad that was so naive that she didn't notice the thing all of the rest of them had found out so quickly. With Naruto. Naruto continued his training. He materialized his Zanpakuto spirit in front of him so that he could train to attain his Bankai. He did so away from the Soul Society so that the massive increase in his spirit energy would not damage any of the buildings. Across from Naruto stood a large bipedal fox wearing golden energy as armor. That's it. Naruto's spirit pressure wrapped around him and then burst out in a pillar of energy that pierced the clouds. He felt his raw spirit pressure multiply by over 10 times what it was before. Hi. Naruto finished as he dragged his hand along the side of his glowing sword. The golden energy turned jet black and his sword-wielding arm was covered by a white bone armor while the handle of the sword turned golden. There was an explosion of spirit energy, but he reined it in the best that he could. A small Bankai. Ninshu Shitsurin. I've been training for years to attain this. Naruto looked at his Bankai with a raised eyebrow. The once golden sword had turned black, his Shikai seeming to have reversed itself. He had trained to materialize his Zanpakuto spirit for this very purpose, and instead of a large combat boost, only his spirit pressure seemed to get boosted. The Bankai will boost the abilities of the Shikai even further. Ninshu Shitsurin. Naruto spoke the name of his Bankai on his tongue. He frowned. His Zanpakuto spirit, Ninshu, watched him passively. My Bankai is enhances the bond forged by your Shikai. It allows you to read the hearts of those who have seen its blade. Not their minds, but their hearts. Their intentions will become known to you. Ninshu spoke as he started to fade away and Naruto sheathed his sword once more, returning it to its sealed form. And be warned, this Bankai has a second ability, one that can only be used under one condition. Naruto listened. Ninshu told him the technique. Naruto frowned. Ninshu explained how to use the technique just as he faded away back into Naruto's sword and it left Naruto with a huge frown on his face. It was just another day in Squad 13. "Come back here, Shiba. I'm going to clobber you for that prank. You'll have to catch me. Ah, you caught me, crap." Kane could only shout when he was put in a chokehold by Naruto, who had a broken pot on his head with a flower sticking out of the dirt in his hair. Kane was tapping out as quickly as he could, but Naruto was rubbing his knuckles right into the top of his skull with the intent to put a bald spot. "Stop, gonna get a bald." Kane was going red in the face. "Lord Naruto. Damn it, what do you need, Rukia?" Naruto asked when he noticed Rukia with her new seated officer armband. She was the newest, official, 6th seat in the ranks. Naruto released the choking Kane before putting his hands in his sleeves. Kane sent Rukia a thumbs up. Rukia sent him one back, but Naruto kicked Kane in the ass hard enough to push him to the floor. "Well, would you look at the time. I've got to go see if my wife has come back from her assignment yet. Maybe go make sure Apache hasn't killed anyone while I'm at it." Kane passed Rukia, smacking the middle of her back to get her to take a step closer to Naruto. He saluted Naruto before he left. The blonde could only sigh in annoyance. "Over 70 years I've known that man, and he's only ever been the biggest man baby. So Rukia, do you need me for something? And don't call me Lord Naruto," Naruto stated to her. Everyone called him, and it was starting to catch on with other squads at this point. Apache loved it because she couldn't tell that everyone was saying it sarcastically. Only Rukia said the title with genuine respect for the title, and that just made it even more humiliating for him, all things considered. "Captain Yukitake wanted me to." "Oh well, he asked him to check to make sure he isn't overworking you, so he wanted me to ask you to take a small vacation." Captain Aizen actually suggested it to Captain Yukitake. "You take more assignments than others," Rukia stated as she passed on a message that had been passed on from a captain to captain. She agreed. Naruto looked at her. "Okay, I'll take a few days to relax at home." Naruto didn't argue. If there were 2 captains, maybe more, asking him to take a rest, then he would spend a little bit of time resting to placate them. Yukitake even sent the cute petite little bunny that was Rukia to tell him the order, knowing he wouldn't argue as much against it. "Well, I'll go get Apache then." "Lord Naruto?" Apache asked, appearing out of nowhere. Naruto had his hand on the wall, holding his chest with his other hand after getting the shock of his life when she came out of nowhere. He didn't scream or even say a word at all. 2 days later. "So here we are. You got a few days off. What happened to your armor, Naruto?" Tear asked her son as she looked at him, wearing only the pants of a Shinigami. Naruto had ditched most of his clothes, so his mask was on full display. His hollow armor was mostly gone though, with the only proof of his status being the hole in his stomach and the mask over his lower face. Naruto laughed a little. "It became part of my sword sheath." Naruto had a white sheath to his Zanpakuto, made from his hollow armor. Naruto lifted his pants up though and showed his armor boots were still attached to his body though, and they extended all the way up his shin. "Gotta be honest, feels better not having the armor." Naruto looked away from his naked mother when he realized that she didn't have her armor anymore either. She was in a rancor, as were the others now. "So are you a captain?" "I don't want to draw that much attention to myself, honestly. I've made almost everyone think I'm weaker than I am. Don't want them discovering my secret." Naruto sent her a thumbs up. She nodded her head and sat in the white sands of Hueco Mundo with a motherly look to her eyes. She placed a hand on her thigh and welcomed him to lay his head down on her lap. He nodded his head and just laid his body in the sand, his head right on his mother's lap as she stroked his hair. It was relaxing. Her scent after so long was enough to melt his stress away. Even though her scent had changed a bit, it was still her scent. "Hell no. Being Lord Naruto's guard is my job. We aren't switching places just because you want to try your hand at walking around the Soul Society. I would be better suited to it, for unlike you, I am quite silent. I'm best suited for it. I'm big." "Well, kind of hard to relaxing with the fighting." Naruto deadpanned, since the 3 other women in his life decided to start shit with each other like always. Over 70 years of barely seeing each other, and instead of kissing and making up, they decide to try and shove foots into asses and their own feet in their mouths. Tear ignored the fighting and just ran her fingers through his hair. He would deal with it later. Later? Who died? Naruto couldn't stop the question when he walked himself right into Squad 13, not sure what had happened that had everyone he passed being so sad. The entire mood of the barracks was down to the point that even Sun, who was taken over for Apache since she won the fight, could tell something was wrong with the atmosphere. It was running through the hallways. Rukia was running to him, having sensed he had come back to the squad after being gone for almost 4 days. She was in tears. "Naruto, I'm so sorry, it was the only way I had to do it, I was the only one there who." Rukia was bawling as she grabbed onto him. Even later. "Ah, so it was Kain and Miyako." Naruto consoled Rukia, who had been the one to do the deed herself. Miyako had been killed by a hollow, and then that hollow possessed and ended up being the root cause of Kain's death as well. Rukia had been the one who put Kane down, dealing the blow that killed him. They had lost two great members of the squad in the time he had been gone, and it was with a heavy burden that he rubbed Rukia's back as she cried into his chest. Sun watched without a single care, feeling nothing for the girl who had killed one of her beloved squadmates. I wasn't strong enough to save him. It's okay, you did the right thing. Putting a comrade out of their mercy, that is just as important as saving their life. You killed Kane and saved his dignity for him. He died with honor, at the hands of one of his beloved juniors. Kane wouldn't be mad at you, so don't blame yourself. It's okay, it is okay. Naruto assured Rukia. He rubbed her back and let her cry. He should have never agreed to take a short vacation, because him leaving stopped him from being there when he was needed most. He didn't try and say that to comfort Rukia, because he knew she would really blame herself, seeing as she was the one who passed the message on to him that he was being asked to take that vacation. What is the use of dignity when you're dead? So the people who remember you after you're dead can hold your memory up even higher. You helped let Kane die as a man and not a monster. His last moments alive, he was Kane, he was our friend, and that is important. Tomorrow, I'll go pay respects to his family on behalf of everyone here. But I'll be the one doing it because I wasn't there when it happened. Naruto didn't let Rukia argue. The fact was that he had little doubt that the Shiba family would be angry with somebody, so he would take the blame onto himself for it. He would deliver the news to them, and once the news was delivered he would mourn Kane's loss as well. He had to be a supportive shoulder for everyone who was taking the loss hard though. I'm going to get punched in the face tomorrow, 99% sure of that. He didn't need to be smart to know that fact. Sir, I have an important question for you, might you be willing to? Lieutenant, it would be an honor if. Heyo, want to go and get a drink tonight? Rukia was speaking to herself in a mirror, sitting Caesar, before she collapsed onto her side in annoyance as she tried to practice what she wanted to say. She rolled across the floor in agony as she couldn't quite figure out the way to say it. She looked at her arm badge sitting on the floor next to her. Third seat. It had been 15 years since the death of Kane, and she had trained with her Shikai and raised herself so that she took Kane's old seat. She was ranked number 3 in her squad now, right behind Naruto and the captain. It wasn't just like 15 years had passed, this was the 15th anniversary of his death. Naruto had helped her to recover mentally from the stress that came with her ending her superior and friend's life. They lost several seated officers that day, and she hadn't thought she would be fit to take the position. Everyone wanted to leave the third seat unfilled, but Naruto made the decision that there would be no lacking seat in their squad. How does somebody ask somebody else on a date? Rukia sighed and sat up. She wanted to ask her superior on a date for multiple reasons, but the biggest of which was that Naruto always got sad on the anniversary days of any of their squad member deaths. There were 19 days a year when Naruto would go and visit the different graves of their fallen allies, and he would become sullen on those days. She wanted to cheer him up, ask him to do something with her, and repay him for the help that he had given her. Rukia? Hello? Yes. Rukia grabbed her badge and started to tie it to her arm when one of her squadmates entered her room, sweating from a long run. The captain of the 11th squad just challenged Naruto to a fight. Yes. Rukia knew that Kenpachi Zaraki had challenged Naruto to many fights, and Naruto had never accepted a single fight to this day. Naruto never walked nearby Squad 11 because of the fact that it always ended up being him refusing a fight. Naruto accepted. What? Rukia shot up to her feet and ran out of the room. But Naruto. He was pissed. Man, if I knew that all I needed to do to get a fight out of you was kick over your friend's grave, I would have done it years ago. Don't worry, I'll fix it after the fight. Kenpachi was a mountain of muscle, taller than Naruto by a long shot. The man leaked constant killing intent, joy, and his spiritual pressure was massive even for a captainless Shinigami. Naruto was very pissed. You can't beat me, Captain Zaraki. As powerful as you are, you actually won't be able to defeat me. Naruto had already unleashed his Shikai, and he was ready for the man. The small pink-haired girl nearby watched with a smile on her face. Naruto sighed and deactivated his Shikai, bringing his sword back to its sealed state. Both vanished. Both reappeared between each other with their swords clashing, and the air pressure from their blows knocked some of the nearby observers off their feet. The wall behind Naruto had a slash appear on it from Zenpachi's raw strength, while Naruto refused to allow his sword to make a shockwave. Their physical strength was matched. That spoke more about how unrealistically strong Zenpachi was than it said anything about Naruto. He can actually match a vast Lord in raw strength. I was captainless in strength before I ever became a Shinigami too. Naruto knew how strong his species was, and vast Lord were equal to captains in strength well, until a captain used their Bankai at least. He, Naruto, was a vast Lord who had attained Shinigami powers through hard study and training. He was in a league above regular vast Lord. Hahaha. This will be fun, let's say we make it more so. Kenpachi removed his eye patch. Naruto raised his spirit pressure up in response as well, he raised his power to its maximum and kept even with Kenpachi, who only laughed with glee. Bet him Kenny. Both fighters pulled back their swords and clashed again with an explosion of spirit energy exuding from their bodies. Apologize for disrespecting his grave. How can I apologize, it got you to finally fight me. Now, let's cut each other down. Kenpachi pulled back his sword and swung it again. He received a slash across the chest and he slashed his sword through Naruto's chest in return. Both of their blood stained the ground between them and he laughed in glee at an opponent who hurt him. They kept clashing blades. Soon enough, the witnesses started to run away from their clash as the walls and buildings around them fell. They caused small-scale destruction with their fight. Bet him Lord Naruto. Kill me if you can, that's it. Kenpachi received a wound that would be fatal to most people as his stomach was slashed open, but his muscles kept his guts from spilling out. Apologize. Naruto received a slash as a sword tore through his shoulder. Never. Your reputation as the captainless lieutenant was always something I wanted to test. Why would such a strong guy fake being so weak even when you're suppressing yourself? You can't hide how strong you are. I think you should apologize, you're a strong fighter who dishonored himself by pretending to be a weakling. I'm not pretending. Naruto argued as he blocked a blade aiming for his head. His wounds healed. His regeneration kicked in, and the wounds that Kenpachi was inflicting on him were healing nearly as fast as the man was inflicting them. They're keeping up with me, and I'm strong. I'm getting lucky. See, you should apologize for lying so much, this isn't luck, you're a dangerous foe, a monster just like me, and I want to keep fighting until I see which one of us is the bigger monster here. Kenpachi saw that his pink-haired girl had been knocked far away by the shockwaves of their fight, or maybe she had left to get some distance on them. He saw a golden glow. Naruto reactivated his Shikai the second it was just the two of them. My Shikai makes all wounds we inflict on each other become shared wounds. This fight is over now, you can't win anymore. Every attack you do to Naruto was stopped when Kenpachi slashed him across the chest in a surprising move of not giving a funk about himself. The wound he inflicted on Naruto was mirrored on himself as both of their blood went flying again, and Naruto responded by instinct of inflicting the same wound on Kenpachi with his own sword. Kenpachi slashed Naruto again and inflicted the wound on both of them. Who cares if I get cut, I'm going to enjoy this fight. You will die, you mad fool. You're enjoying this fight isn't worth your life. Naruto turned off his Shikai and dodged a sword the second he realized that Kenpachi was just going to keep fighting until he died. Naruto didn't want the man dead, he just wanted an apology for the man kicking over the grave of his friend. Kenpachi was covered in lethal wounds and still fighting. If Naruto had kept his Shikai activated, the man would literally kill himself before he stopped fighting. The sword went through Naruto's stomach. Naruto's sword was also through Kenpachi's stomach. Naruto had reacted by complete instinct and pierced Kenpachi's body. The second Kenpachi went for the heart with him. Instead of dealing any damage, all that happened was that Kenpachi's sword uselessly pierced through his hollow hole hidden behind his bandages. I've pierced your liver, you will bleed out and die if you don't go and get. Naruto jumped back and reactivated his Shikai. You will die without killing me. I'm fully healed right now and you're injured with almost 30 life-threatening wounds. End this fight, get healed, and then fix Kane's grave. Naruto shouted in frustration. Why do you hate being strong? I'm not strong. Yes. Kenpachi rushed Naruto and they clashed blades. They slashed each other across the chests and Kenpachi was wounded twice thanks to his Shikai being active. If he ran, Kenpachi would just follow him. People would get involved. Naruto stabbed himself in the neck and pierced both of the arteries in his neck then and there, and the same wound appeared on Kenpachi as well. Naruto sliced open his own throat and Kenpachi's throat was slashed open at the same time. The difference was that Naruto healed moments later and Kenpachi was left grabbing his throat with his free hand. Grinning. You have seconds to live, go get healed before you die. Naruto deactivated his Shikai once he sensed more people coming to view the fight again. Kenpachi, on the verge of death, had his spirit pressure weakened to the point that people felt it was safe to come and view them. Kenpachi didn't put his sword away. Instead he rushed towards Naruto to continue the fight. He couldn't talk, but the man's grin told everything that needed to be said. Kenpachi was dead by the time anyone arrived to see the fight again. All they saw was Naruto standing over Kenpachi's corpse with his sword in hand. You battle fiend, this is why I've always avoided fighting you, why I never approached you. Naruto sheathed his sword. The battle was over. Kenpachi was dead, having succumbed to his fatal wounds on the middle of the street. Naruto. That was what Rukia arrived on the scene to seeing. Rukia, your badge is upside down. Sorry I was late, but it seems like I got a little caught up. Let's go fix our friend's grave, let's squad 11 mourn the loss of their captain. Naruto knew that he wasn't going to be punished for this, since he knew how the captain status of Squad 11 was passed by murdering the previous one. Naruto, you killed him. Captain Aizen was right, a fight between the captain and Uzumaki ended with Captain Zaraki dead. The third seat of Squad 11 came forward and grabbed the side of his bald head. The man seemed shocked by it. Captain Aizen? Naruto wondered. Well, he did try and tell Kenpachi to stop trying to fight Naruto, and now I see why. Captain Uzumaki, you mean? Shit. Naruto realized that the same reason why he wouldn't get punished for murdering Kenpachi was going to be the same reason why he wasn't going to be able to stay a lieutenant anymore. Yukitake had been trying to get him promoted to captain for some time now, but he had never accepted the promotion. Now he had no choice. Yes. Lord Naruto is now a captain, like he deserves to be. Apache was back as his guardian, since his mother's 3 loyal servants switched places every 5 years, and now it was Apache's turn again. I should go thank Captain Aizen for trying to stop Kenpachi from fighting me, even if it was a useless thing, at least he tried to help me. Naruto sighed and rubbed the top of Rukia's head. He had to report his killing of Kenpachi to the captains, since that meant that he was going to have to take over the role until his death. Sir, you're a captain now. I know. I guess Captain Yukitake is going to have to replace me, and not even that long after I managed to get him to make you third seat. Naruto wasn't happy about this. Why did this have to happen? So this part ends here. Alright, that's it for today's video guys. Let me know in the comments section how was the story, and also don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I will meet you in another video. Bye bye.